Howdy folks, welcome to the channel Thinking Theology. I'm Don. This channel just is about anything that is even remotely connected to some theological implication or direct topic. I'm agnostic, so I don't establish any religion or belief in God. I don't care if people do. Maybe there is a God somewhere. I just, the biblical texts no longer do it for me. They did in the past, and I was fairly scholarly, put it that way, but that wound up being my undoing. So be that as conclude from that what you will. But I don't have a problem if somebody believes in God, if somebody's an atheist. I like people who are just pretty open-minded and chill. Let's put it that way. If I can hang out with you, I like it. And I don't hang out with people because I agree with them or disagree with them. I like nice people. But this was interesting. I saw the title. I watched it. It's only about a minute and a half long. Do atheists have near-death experiences? And I'm like, well, that's an interesting title. So I watched this panel, and I may do more from them. It was an interesting panel. I want to look into what they're about. But there were just a couple of salient points in here that just sort of are worth plugging into the equation of what we each believe. Just interesting, if on no other basis, then it's like it's interesting socially.
I want to come back to this question of how much our prior beliefs shape the experience. Now, you said that atheists have these experiences.
Indeed, they do.
Why? I mean, presumably they don't believe in angelic beings.
No, they don't believe in angelic beings. We have two atheists in our series. The first one, and this, if you were listening to Mary, she was very careful about what she was saying. She was talking about the interpretation of the experience as she saw it. Well, if you were an atheist, you'd interpret the experience as you see it. And our first atheist refused any sort of being in the experience. What they did was they dissolved into pure energy, and they floated through a blue environment with pure energy. They came to the light, and they had the same experience of the overwhelming feelings of love. And then the experience ended. So it was not populated in quite the same way as Mary's experience was. The other one was very similar, but this time there were more people who they met, and they met dead relatives, which is very common in near-death experiences. So the fact that you don't believe anything is going to happen doesn't stop it happening.
Yeah, there are many ways in which we try to account for phenomena or anything that we observe, and certainly near-death experiences. They, in some ways, kind of fall into the realm of dreams. Like, what are dreams about? Like, I was listening to a couple of seminars, lengthy ones on neuroscience and memory, and fascinating what they've uncovered about the brain, how it works, but just little tidbits of information that you pick up on that stick with you. But for example, the human brain comprises roughly 3% of 2 to 3% of a human's body weight. The average humans, the average American, I think, weighs 150 pounds. I'm sure that's climbing because we're getting fat. And the average human brain, I think, weighs about 3 pounds? 2 to 3 pounds. Anyway, somewhere in the neighborhood of 3% of a human's body weight. And it uses up about 20% of the body's energy, because even at night it's always going, because it's controlling the various organs in the body, breathing and such, the involuntary functions. But there's fluid that builds up around in the cranial cavity around the brain throughout the day. And when you go to sleep at night, that fluid drains out and gets reabsorbed by the body. Now, does that contribute? Just fluid running over the brain and the brain sort of resetting itself in that regard? Is that what causes the lack of pattern recognition that takes place, or pattern observance in dreams where it's all over and it's disjointed? But are near-death experiences just an accumulation of the memories that are in your brain, or perhaps the most salient ones? Whether you're in denial that you believe a given thing or not, Maybe somebody says they don't believe in God, and yet there they are, seeing Jesus in their dream at the end of a bright white light tunnel, or however people depict these things. It's so subjective, and it's not testable, so you wouldn't consider it scientific. Now, science has enormous advantages because we can observe things, we can repeat them, and they're more reliable, but they're not absolutely dispositive. They form the basis of much of what we believe and much of what we benefit from, whether it's dental care, medical care, engineering, bridges, aircraft, and such. So we rely heavily on that which we can see, observe, test, repeat in a lab, and so on. But there's always things that we don't know. The thing about near-death experiences as people report them is that there are many ways of accounting for them, but you can't test it because you got to bump somebody off in order for it to happen. So how would you even test what was going on in a near-death experience? What lobes were being excited? What parts of the brain? What neural connections were being made? So is it just a thing that, like, as you're about to expire and you take your last breath, or almost take your last breath, or do take it, and then the brain's closing down, all the neurons fire, or many of them fire up there, such that it looks like a white light, and you may have some residual memories or some deep-seated ones from childhood or middlehood or whatever, and then they resuscitate you and bring you back. Now, like he said, the gentleman said in the beginning, well, if you're an atheist, you're going to interpret that through the lens of which you already believe. Now, some folks might change their mind based on that. I wonder if anybody's done a video where Christians have a near-death experience and they don't meet Jesus. Nothing happens. But that also is subject to interpretation, one's own. Everything is subject to interpretation, even scientific results, if you will, that you see in the laboratory. But this is more subjective, much more subjective. Do people's accounts of near-death experiences make other people change their mind? Maybe. Not forcefully, of course, but perhaps just as a moment. Because we look and listen to other people's accounts and stories of life, and some things just get us thinking. But in this one, it was interesting the way he worded it. I wish I'd heard more of what the person's account was. It was after Mary, who I guess the woman there had given an account of a near-death experience. And I guess she was careful. She was just energy. But then another person, there were people, but or one of the people, he said something like refused to see people in it. And I'm not sure what that refusal was. It was a word similar to that. Maybe he did use that. This kind of stuff is just fascinating. And the brain does unbelievable things. It's one of the most complex things that there is. AI is now doing its thing and endeavoring to mimic the brain and thought processes and logic and this kind of stuff. But it's only as good as what we put into it. And we're putting into it learning. So it can learn. And that's kind of scary because it can learn at a rate much more quickly than we can because you can put more data and information into it. So what is that going to lead to? I don't know. But the brain is absolutely complex. So much we don't know about it. So what would a near-death experience be when things are shutting down in the body and then they come back online? That is still extraordinarily subjective. Will we ever figure it out? I don't know. I have no idea. I'll be dead before that happens, so it's irrelevant to me in that regard. So, all right, folks, if you've had a near-death experience, feel free to put it in the comments and any other thing you want to say about what we just saw. Have a great day. See you on another video and keep thinking theology.